Hello and welcome to Spotlight, the webinar series for the 23rd World Petroleum Congress. I'm Etna Traynor and I'm delighted to be your host for the series. Now, the World Petroleum Congress is taking place in the city of Houston in Texas in December 2021. Just a few months away, and of course we're really looking forward to engaging with so many thought leaders in the energy sector from right around the world. This Spotlight webinar, the whole series, is brought to you by the World Petroleum Congress and by our Congress sponsors. And it's really a preview of the candid insights our Congress program will offer. Insights into the multitude of innovative solutions that will help to shape the future of energy. This is our 5th episode, the Houston Energy Transition Strategy. And joining us today is our very special guest, Bobby Tudor. Bobby is the chair of Tudor, Pickering and Holt, and he's also the chair of the Greater Houston Partnership's Energy Transition Strategy. I'm going to now hand over to Bobby, who will share with us just how Houston is preparing for the energy transition. Bobby, over to you.
Thank you, Etna, and thank you to the World Petroleum Congress for inviting me to be here. I'm coming to you from Houston today, and I must tell you we are so looking forward to hosting the 23rd WPC this December. We like to call Houston the energy capital of the world, with all deference to our friends around the globe, and I can't think of a better city to have this year's gathering than Houston. Our industry is at a pivotal moment in our long history of evolution and revolution, and Houston is right at the heart of that. We look forward to the important discussions that will take place this December, and we hope to see you here in Houston. Today, I want to talk to you about the global energy transition and important work going on here in Houston, both within the energy companies and among business and civic leaders, as we think about that transition and the opportunity it presents to our community. To start my presentation, I want to rewind back more than a year, right before the global pandemic took hold, in January 2020, when I was stepping into my role as chair of the Greater Houston Partnership, which is the Houston Region's Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development organization. At the partnership, we are focused on Houston's long-term economic success, and how the energy transition proceeds is of critical importance to not only the energy industry, but to every business leader in Houston. The focus of my speech in January 2020 was on the importance of establishing Houston as the global leader of the energy transition to a lower carbon world. That speech was framed around the coming transition. Today, I'm here to say that the transition is happening now, and I believe it presents tremendous opportunity for Houston. So going back to my speech from many months ago, I highlighted 4 key thoughts. Number 1, the energy industry has been very good to Houston. Number 2, oil and gas production and consumption are not disappearing anytime soon. But, number 3, the traditional oil and gas business is not likely to be the same engine for growth in Houston for the next 25 years that it's been in the past 25 years. And number 4, as Houston business leaders, we have both an opportunity and a responsibility to lead the transition to a cleaner, more efficient, and more sustainable lower carbon world. In the many conversations I've had since then, it has become even more clear that we in Houston, and for that matter, we in the world, are facing an acute dual challenge. We need to do 2 things simultaneously that sometimes seem at odds with one another. On one hand, we need to meet a global demand for energy that will continue to grow well into the future. On the other hand, we need to protect that future from the real and growing threat of climate change caused by ever-increasing CO2 emissions. That said, even the most ardent advocates for an abrupt transition away from fossil fuels will admit that it is likely that, absent some unexpected technological breakthrough in battery and other industrial technology, global demand for fossil fuels will continue to grow for some time period, though the length of which can be debated. Since my speech in early 2020, the expectation for when peak global demand would be reached has accelerated by several years from the late 2030s to the early 2030s. Although the length of the runway may have shortened, in order to avoid massive economic disruption and hardship, especially in the developing world, we will need to continue to produce and consume large amounts of hydrocarbon-based fuels for many decades to come, as the world's population grows and emerging economies bring billions out of poverty. In 1990, the OECD accounted for almost 2/3 of global energy demand. The developing world, just 1/3. By 2040, that is projected to completely flip, with emerging economies accounting for over 2/3 of demand. Adequate, reliable, and affordable energy is critical to more than 1 billion globally who live in energy poverty with no access to electricity. But at the same time, we know that the production and use of hydrocarbons, the lifeblood of global economies since the Industrial Revolution, have also been a major source of greenhouse gas emissions that are affecting the Earth's atmosphere, disrupting the ecosystems and infrastructures we rely on, and threatening those very same global economies. That's the dual challenge. And if Houston knows how to do anything, it knows how to solve problems. So what is Houston's role in the transition? And what are the opportunities? The Greater Houston Partnership set out at the beginning of this year to answer these questions and to develop a regional energy transition strategy. With the support of McKinsey, we took a deep dive into understanding how the energy transition will likely impact Houston. What are the areas where Houston can lead, and what can the partnership do to support those efforts and advance Houston's continued economic growth and opportunity for all? Our answers to these questions were informed by over 60 stakeholder interviews with key leaders across the energy industry. We focused our examination on 3 factors that will influence the pace of the energy transition. First, the changing composition of energy sources to meet growing global demand. Second, investor sentiment and societal influence. And third, proposed government action. We approached the formation of the strategy with this core belief. Houston has a responsibility and an opportunity to leverage our energy leadership to accelerate global solutions for a lower carbon future. No clear path has been determined for how society will solve the dual challenge. There's been a lot of talk, but the plans are still forming. It's urgent, but will take a long time. It will be hard and complex. It will require investing trillions of dollars in new energy technologies and infrastructure around the world. It's the kind of challenge that Houston is equipped to lead, primarily because of our incumbent energy industry and our understanding of this complex system. And we know the issues that Houston is trying to address are similar issues many energy-focused communities and regions are also trying to address. We are taking learnings from many of your communities and hope Houston's path can serve as a model for regions around the world. We know the success of Houston's energy industry as it navigates the transition is critical to our long-term growth and continued strength as a global city. The great news is Houston's incumbent energy companies are already making significant investments in lower carbon solutions and are working to reduce emissions within their operations. To be clear, the partnership fully acknowledges that every company is responding differently to the transition. We are not here to prescribe a business strategy or advocate for fundamental changes to their business models. That is not our job. However, it is our job to attract new businesses and investment that position the region as a great global city. And in the context of the energy transition, the partnership will be seeking more risk capital to prove out incremental solutions or fund the big-ticket breakthroughs. It is also our job to connect the dots and encourage collaboration among those who would benefit in working together to reach shared objectives, whether that is building an advanced plastics recycling facility or in an effort to decarbonize the Houston Ship Channel. The partnership is advocating for solving problems. In our stakeholder conversations, it was clear that these companies had already identified the opportunities they were interested in exploring. The partnership is here to help enable, support, and celebrate those opportunities through this strategy. When we talk about the energy transition as an opportunity to drive Houston's continued growth, what exactly does that mean? McKinsey modeled Houston's potential job growth under 3 scenarios: business as usual, accelerated transition, and a 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway. Business as usual represents the continuation of existing trends and captures expectations of how global consumption and future technologies will evolve. Accelerated transition illustrates a scenario where there is a more accelerated uptake and development of lower carbon technologies and more aggressive government policies to develop and scale these technologies. 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway would require CO2 emissions by 2050 to drop by 90% compared to the business as usual projection and 70% from the accelerated transition projection to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway. McKinsey's analysis suggests that as many as 560,000 jobs could be created by 2050 in the Houston region if we were to take decisive action to lead in the energy transition, which means Houston would have to work aggressively to capture a significant share of the trillions of dollars that will be invested globally in the transition. The flip side of this is a point I made last year. The incumbent oil and gas industry will not be the same driver for growth in the next 25 years as it has been in the previous 25 years. The transition will be a part of this, but much of this is due to flattening demand and improved efficiencies. There are a number of upstream oil and gas jobs that we will never recover. And new company formation in the incumbent oil and gas industry is already dramatically lower than in the prior 2 decades. So as we think about the transition, it's important to note there are multiple lenses we could apply to compel action or evaluate success of the strategy beyond job creation. These include environmental benefits and equity considerations. While we are using job creation as the best proxy of our goal of opportunity for all, we are also mindful of those parallel priorities and understand they must also be factored into shaping a successful path forward. Understanding that Houston must act to ensure its future economic prosperity and to be a solutions partner for a lower carbon world, let's look at how we can accomplish this across 3 dimensions. First, Houston's competitive advantages. Second, the energy value chains of the lower carbon future. And third, the ecosystem building activities that we must collectively pursue. Let's start with the assets Houston can leverage to capture the economic value presented by the transition. Through a city benchmark analysis and the feedback from stakeholder interviews, there are 5 key attributes that position Houston to lead. First, Houston is home to a large, diverse, and technically oriented workforce. The Houston region has deep experience in all aspects of the energy industry, including engineering and digital technology, to complex industrial project management, to commercial acumen, to research and development, to deep understanding of global trading markets and policy drivers. The emerging low-carbon energy markets may call for additional skills, but those new skills will complement and build on the capabilities that developed in Houston over several generations. Second, there is no place in America, and few in the world, that matches Houston for its concentration of energy infrastructure. The miles of pipelines, refineries, storage facilities, and logistics capacity all lend themselves to rapidly scaling new energy technologies like CCUS, hydrogen, and advanced recycling of plastics. Third, Houston benefits from significant, already existing renewable generation capacity. Houston taps directly into the Texas power grid, which generates more wind power than any other state and more solar power than any but California. This advantages Houston to be at the center of the developing renewable-based solutions, such as green hydrogen. Fourth, the city's policy and culture are strongly supportive of business innovation and growth. Our business-friendly environment supports the kind of growth and scale required for a comprehensive transition to new lower-carbon technologies and infrastructure. Additionally, Houston offers startups a proximity and connection with an industry hungry for new solutions and technologies that they can scale and rapidly commercialize. Houston should be the world's energy transition laboratory. Finally, Houston's enormous port, rail, and air infrastructure represents a significant platform for implementing large-scale decarbonization initiatives. For example, the Houston Ship Channel's concentration of point source emissions, pipeline and logistics infrastructure, and energy-consuming manufacturing facilities presents an ideal ecosystem for capturing and transporting CO2, as well as producing and distributing hydrogen and reprocessing plastics. Plus, the transport of hydrogen, ammonia, biofuels, clean LNG, and other products is eased through the largest port in the United States. These strengths provide us the opportunity to explore which value chains in the energy transition Houston should pursue. The partnership's energy transition strategy encourages action across value chains in 3 domains. The first is to jumpstart emerging technologies and markets where Houston has a strategic advantage. Carbon capture, use, and storage, or CCUS, is a good example. CCUS refers to the process of capturing the CO2 that is emitted from point sources like power plant smokestacks, refineries, steel mills, and cement factories. The captured CO2 is either put to use as raw material for carbon-based materials, for example, or to improve the efficiency of existing oil and gas wells, or it is pumped deep underground for permanent storage. Experts worldwide cite CCUS as critical to any realistic strategy for achieving net zero emissions and meeting the climate goals set by the Paris Climate Accords. Houston is an obvious place to develop CCUS technologies and to implement them at scale. We are home to an unparalleled concentration of manufacturing facilities with point source emissions, along with extensive infrastructure of pipelines for moving CO2 and ready access to underground reservoirs for storing CO2 once it is captured. Houston is also home to leading policy work on CCUS through the Center for Houston's Future, the University of Houston, and Rice University. The Greater Houston Partnership has already kicked off implementation of this strategic work stream with the formation of a working group to support the decarbonization of the Houston Ship Channel. Other examples of technologies and markets included in this leg of the energy transition strategy include a hub for low-carbon hydrogen production and application. The Houston Gulf Coast region is home to the world's leading hydrogen system, producing approximately a third of the nation's hydrogen gas annually. The region also encompasses a network of 48 hydrogen production plants supported by over 900 miles of hydrogen pipelines, which is more than half of the U.S.'s hydrogen pipelines and 1/3 of the world's hydrogen pipelines. Studies sponsored by the Center for Houston's Future and others have highlighted the potential for Houston to become a leader in driving a hydrogen-based economy, including green hydrogen, produced from zero-emissions power sources and raw materials. Another area of opportunity includes advanced strategies and technologies for recycling plastics, often referred to as part of the circular economy. The region's petrochemical leaders have been sponsoring work to develop recycling technologies that break plastics down at the molecular level for reuse. An effort supported by the partnership is in progress to create a complete end-to-end circular economy value chain to be deployed in Houston. Battery manufacturing and advancements in energy storage solutions, an essential part of any path to net zero energy emissions, represent yet another priority in this leg of the Houston energy transition strategy. Houston possesses the required underlying backbone for this sector, a result of its leading chemical and advanced materials expertise, large-scale manufacturing capabilities, as well as the industrial port area that supports the development and export of battery and energy storage systems. The partnership is working to attract battery manufacturing companies and startups as part of a growing energy storage ecosystem, paving the way for emerging new energy storage technologies, including mechanical and chemical advances to increase the efficiency, reliability, and duration of energy storage. The emphasis here is on wind energy, solar power, renewable natural gas, low-carbon LNG, and biofuels, all being key enablers for decarbonizing the energy industry, as well as for advancing the hydrogen and energy storage value chains. Texas produces more wind power than any other U.S. state and more solar power than any state other than California. Texas is well positioned to have the first net zero grid, and Houston can play a key role in this development by expanding the city's renewable capacity and leveraging its access to talent and energy financing. The Houston Energy Transition Strategy aims to take steps to support solar and wind development in conjunction with the City of Houston's Climate Action Plan by actively attracting and retaining project developers, asset owners, and financial traders to Houston. The third leg of the strategy goes broad instead of deep, setting out to enable continued growth across Houston's entire range of energy industries. The partnership will drive 7 cross-cutting initiatives to accelerate the development and growth of multiple sectors, ranging from electrical vehicle systems to the decarbonization of natural gas and oil, from petrochemicals to nature-based solutions, and from energy efficiency technologies to geothermal energy production. These cross-cutting initiatives are focused on creating a collaborative environment that enables activities across this wide range. They include many activities that are already part of the partnership's strategic priorities. For example, the long-standing efforts to attract leading energy companies and startups, as well as the Upskill Houston and the Greater Houston Higher Ed United with Business initiatives aimed at regional talent development, and advocacy for smart and supportive public policy. Houston will need to be the home of innovative solutions that will be produced locally and deployed globally. We must also be focused on the development of the skills needed in the future to drive this new energy economy. This will prevent the displacement of workers and ideally maintain Houston's standing as a global hub for energy expertise. Working with the City of Houston, the Center for Houston's Future, and other partners, the partnership will also publicly promote Houston's commitment to energy transition leadership on a global stage, welcoming new generations of talented, innovative individuals, startups, and established enterprises from around the world. Finally, and importantly, our efforts will include a workstream dedicated to ensuring a flow of capital into the region, tapping sources and financing models ranging from federal government appropriations to venture capital to green bonds. Make no mistake, the energy transition will not be easy, nor will it be cheap. While industry will be critical to developing and scaling future clean tech innovations, there's a limitation to the amount of risk capital that can be allocated to exploring these solutions when the economics are unclear and balance sheets aren't strong. That makes collaboration with the startup community, academia, and government critical to developing the incremental and breakthrough technologies that get us closer to reaching our climate goals and having the funding to embark on these endeavors. Houston's energy transition strategy is rooted in the city's eagerness for innovation, our appetite for high-risk and high-reward business investments, and our capacity for executing on massive, complex projects around the world. It also leverages Houston's deep experience and infrastructure in producing, moving, financing, and marketing energy. Our goal is to drive sustainable and equitable economic growth in Greater Houston as we create value from the world's transition to lower carbon energy systems. Through this effort, we want to position Houston as the leading hub of energy and clean tech innovation, and I am optimistic that we can and will lead. We can't wait for the World Petroleum Congress taking place this December in Houston. As I described here today, Houston has an amazing story to tell, and I think you will be surprised at how welcoming we are to both the incumbent energy players and the new energy players, all helping to drive the energy transition forward. That welcoming spirit is Houston's calling card, and we look forward to sharing more about our vision for the future this December. Thanks again to the WPC for having me here today, and I hope you plan to take part in our global conversation. We look forward to seeing you in Houston. Etna, now I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Bobby, and really great to hear your views. And as we've just heard, Houston is definitely looking to the future, and it's ready and committed to tackle the dual challenge ahead, helping the world meet the global demand for energy while ensuring protection from the growing threat of climate change. Now, Bobby shared with us what he sees are some of Houston's competitive advantages. So let's have a quick review of a few key points. Now, firstly, Houston is home to a large, diverse and technically oriented workforce. Second, Houston is unmatched for its concentration of energy infrastructure. Third, he said that Houston has already existing renewable energy generation capacity. Fourth, the city's culture and policy strongly support business innovation and growth. And finally, Houston's port, rail and air infrastructure offer a significant platform for implementing large-scale decarbonization initiatives. To drive sustainable and equitable economic growth in Greater Houston, the Greater Houston Partnership will focus on jump-starting emerging technologies and markets where Houston has a strategic advantage, such as with CCUS, attracting and supporting companies in the growing new energy industries, and enabling growth across Houston's entire range of energy industries, ranging really from electric vehicle systems to geothermal energy production. It's clearly a tall order, but it's necessary and absolutely essential. And as Bobby said, Houston's openness, its eagerness for innovation, and appetite for high-risk and high-reward business investments are hallmarks of its success and will be key to driving the energy transition forward. So thank you, Bobby. Now, a replay of this presentation will be available on the website for video on demand within the next 24 hours. Remember, the 23rd World Petroleum Congress is scheduled for December 5th to the 9th, 2021, and of course that's in Houston, in Texas. In the meanwhile, we're going to continue to bring you engaging and informative episodes of Spotlight. So until next time, be sure to follow the 23rd World Petroleum Congress on social media, hashtag 23WPC 2021. Stay informed and involved, and also be sure to share this webinar with your friends and your colleagues. That's it for me and from all of us at the World Petroleum Congress and the Spotlight team. So thank you so much for joining us.